Hello, I'm Joe Ruggiero, and welcome to my podcast, Inspired, and the people who inspire me. Today we're going to Hollywood once again, and a guy who has quite a resume. Michael Fortrell, most recently, has served as a producer on Central Intelligence, starring Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart, which followed the record-breaking box office success of Furious 7. And the fate of the Furious marks Fortrell's fifth collaboration with Universal Pictures on their highest-grossing franchise, having produced two Fast and Furious 5 and Furious 7. Many of you remember, I'm sure. But he also was involved with a movie which really touched my heart called Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon. But I don't want to take any of the thunder, and I want to hear it from Michael Fortrell. Welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Well,
I appreciate it.
You have an interesting story about how you got in this business, and I want you to share it with my listeners.
Well, as your podcast is called Inspired, it's when you look in the dictionary, it's divine inspiration. Divine is an adjective that's used throughout being inspired. I call it divine intervention. When I was a junior in high school, my grandfather pulled me out of school and took me to a Rotary Club luncheon. And there was a speaker that afternoon. His name was George Lucas. And I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to have captured lightning in a bottle that afternoon. I've always loved movies, I love photography, and I had a sense that I wanted to do something in that business, and pretty much that sealed the deal, that George went to USC Film School, and at that time he was just finishing American Graffiti. This was 1976, I believe. Excuse me. It was way earlier than that, 72, 71's, yeah. And he was just finishing that time. Star Wars wasn't even on the horizon, maybe on his horizon, but
Right.
We knew nothing about it at that time. But that was my inspiration for applying to USC Film School.
Did you pitch him?
And following, I did not.
You just inspired.
I sent him a letter after I graduated, and I got the standard stamp, I think, from his assistant secretary, whatever, that it was just being placated at the time.
Well, he was associated with Spielberg, right?
Yeah. Well, Spielberg did not go to USC. He went to, I believe, Long Beach. But yes, I believe between Stephen and George, they had a collaboration. But he was the one that inspired me to seek that pathway to go to USC Film School, get out of Modesto, and try something new. And again, I look at it as divine intervention that
You had the moment.
that struck me that day and gave me that direction, because otherwise I was kind of meandering like everybody else at that time.
Well, how did you pitch the idea of getting into the business?
My father.
Oh, really?
Just saying I'd like to go to film school and learn the craft and
What did he say?
and see he was all for it,
Oh, good.
because he loved films. He was the one that he took me to Bond movies during the summers. He took me to Boris Karloff scary movies. He loved movies.
But
So
he was not involved in the
no,
business.
he was a golf pro, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had nothing to do with the film business.
That's very interesting.
Right. But he did help me from a friend of a friend, knew a cinematographer when I was going to college. So my junior and senior year during those summers, I stayed down here in Los Angeles and worked for these D'Angelo, Bullock, and Allen. It was the three gentlemen, three producers that did kids shows. I did the Red Hand Gang. There was Macduff the Talking Dog, Big John, Little John. Just these TV shows. You shoot them on 16 millimeter. But at least it got me in to start working. I started as a stand-in, and then they moved me to like being with the assistant directors. Then I was an electrician for a while. Gave me the ability to kind of move within to learn the crafts of everybody there. I would go over the sound cart and talk to the sound mixer and see what his job was, or go talk to the costumer to see what he or she's job was, and so forth and so on. I kind of learned the craft from coming up, and then I became a location manager my senior year, summer, for one of the shows, and then that kind of launched me into started location managing into the business. So once I graduated, I started knocking on doors, and it just fortuitously happened on La Cienega Boulevard. I went to Max Baer Productions, and they were just starting a movie called Hometown USA. And so they hired me as a location manager, and then that started the ball rolling to working, and then working my next job and working my next job. And I wasn't one of these guys that went traveling right out of school. I was knocking on doors.
But you were inquisitive. I
Yes.
mean, you
Yes.
had a gift for wanting to learn, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, my father was a he was an immigrant from Italy. And I was always very big in shows. I would do the sets, and I would perform, and I would direct, and this and that. And he sat me down one day, and he said, absolutely no Broadway, no design. And I said, well, I have an interest to go to the Annenberg School of Communications. And this is back in 1964. And he said, well, that should be all right, new technology and whatever. And then it took me 60 years to get involved in what I wanted to get involved in, which was design. But it's wonderful that your dad supported.
I think I'm very lucky that way, that he, supported me, and his wife at the time, which was not my mother, was supportive as well to go to USC. It's a big university.
Right.
And maybe, if I started there, maybe if I didn't like what I was doing, I would go to another facet of education, whatever that would be. But no, I stuck with it. And being a location manager allowed me to get in early on in the process, working with a production designer, working with the director, working with the production manager, and understanding creatively what locations were worth picking and choosing for on location versus a set build. How many pages do we have to be in this bedroom? Well, it's going to be smarter to build it rather than shoot it on location and being kind of trapped in a room without walls you can move.
Well, let me ask you this question, because many of our listeners don't know exactly what a producer does. And
Right.
you have been very, very successful. The films
Well,
that
this is a tricky question. It's between producers, executive producers, co-producers, associate producers, co-executive producers, goes on and on. You look at some credits in some of these movies, there's 17 to 22 producers. Well, only 3 really do the work. I'm called a line producer. What a line producer does and how that was created, there's a line in a budget. There's above the line, which is your story rights, your director, your producers, your creative talent, cast, stunts, things like that. You're above the line, which really I can't influence. The below line, everything else as far as physical production, post-production,
budgeting.
everything else is under my purview.
So what was
And
it
that's
like?
technically what line producers do.
What was it like logistically to be involved in the Fast and Furious franchise? I
It
mean,
was a bit trial by fire. I got a phone call from Neil Moritz after I finished Sweet Home Alabama, which we'll go back and talk about in a minute, one afternoon and said, pack your bags, you're going to Miami. We need you down there. I'm going to replace the current line producer, just wasn't working out for some reason. So I went over to Universal Studios, sat down with the production executives, showed me a portion of the budget, which was their picture car budget. I've never seen anything so big in my life, my career. It was pages upon pages upon pages between labor and cars and this and that. And,
yes.
it was quite an awakening. So then I flew down there, got into it, and loved it because I love the challenge of what I don't know, I will know,
Yeah.
and I'll figure it out. And it was it was a great experience because that's when Ludacris first got into the franchise and Tyrese. And that's the first one, or that was one without Vin, so it was with Paul and so forth, and that did a different cast.
And
but
Dwayne, too?
no, Dwayne came in on number 5.
Uh-huh. Dwayne Johnson,
Dwayne
better
Johnson.
known as The Rock.
Correct. He came in on number 5, which was the Rio de Janeiro, dragging the vault through Rio de Janeiro, which we shot in Puerto Rico. But he really gave a shot in the arm to the franchise. His character Hobbs, I think, was awesome. He commanded it. He owned it, and created a little bit more than just street racing.
Right.
Created another form of the franchise.
How is it organizing on location? I mean, in terms of going to a country where you have to put it all together.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think the most challenging for me was, going back to what I meant, is became more of a heist franchise than street racing, because then it's just the attitude and the form of the franchise changed to more of a heist, which I found kind of interesting once Dwayne got infused into the franchise. But I think the biggest one was going to Cuba, to go to Havana, to take this circus with all these performers and everything that's required between their trailers and the lack of any infrastructure in Cuba. Bring our own porta potties, for instance.
Holy
That,
cow.
I mean.
Did you ship them from?
Yeah. We were based out of Atlanta at the time. And so we trucked everything down to this area in the Everglades and barged everything down. Now, prior to that, I had to fly to D.C. with a representative from Universal with me and kiss the ring of the ambassador of Cuba.
Right.
Pitched him what we wanted to do, how this franchise is looked upon, and he was very aware of the franchise and gave us his blessing. And so he made the call down there, and it just opened everything up. It was amazing. And the security and the police and the people down there, we actually brought in a helicopter from Florida to shoot some aerial stuff, and that's the first time a U.S. helicopter's flown in Cuban airspace.
Wow.
There were locals waving white towels. They were so excited seeing something like that. I didn't really understand the impact that we had on them.
Was that before drones? I mean,
Yes.
uh-huh.
Yes. So we brought in a whole aerial unit with an
Wow.
aerial DP.
The budget must have been
and
sizable.
yes.
Now, let me ask you about going back to the States, Sweet Home Alabama.
Yes.
That's
Very interesting. This is all right around 9/11, right? So in prep, we were in New York on 9/11, and we were finishing. We were going to go scouting the next morning. This was Monday. 9/11 was on a Tuesday. So the director, Andy Tennant, said, "Listen, I want to write in the morning, so let's push our scout back to 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever it was." But we were supposed to meet like at 8:30 and go down to Elizabeth and Mott Street to go scout near Little Italy, and thank God we didn't. But not that it would have been in harm's way, but it was right next door to the World Trade Center. So that was, we finally got out on Thursday. Our production designer begged this woman at a rental car agency. She had one car left because everybody bailed. You know, you got locked down. All the ferries were shut down.
Absolutely.
Trains were shut down. Subways, everything.
Right.
So we finally got a car and then drove, the four of us, a set decorator and the first AD and myself, all drove down to Atlanta, rejigged things, and had a production manager in New York help us with the mayor's office, and we were the first company to go back in October of that year to begin shooting. So that was a huge event in the middle of making this movie. And as you know, Reese Witherspoon's character was a fashion designer, so we were there shooting, I believe it was Marc Jacobs. We aligned ourselves, or one other designer shooting
Seventh Avenue,
their show. It was actually in the Pier at that time. They were shooting, that's what we were doing during the 9/11. Then we came back with the cast to shoot with Reese and everybody else, and then we finished up in Atlanta. But it was a great experience.
Well, New York
with
is prone
Lucas.
for that kind of a thing anyway.
Yeah.
They have a film group
Yeah, big
that
time.
facilitates
Huge.
productions.
Yeah, and it goes through the mayor's office, and they were a big advocate of us. Let's get back to normal. You know, that
Right.
was the spirit then after 9/11. Let's
That's
get
right.
back to normal.
That's right.
So we got back to normal, went back and shot, and you could still smell the smell from World Trade Center, even in October.
Which was dangerous.
Now that we know, yeah. we
Right.
could-
Now, you've just celebrated a 25th anniversary of a movie that was based on dangerous liaisons.
Liaisons.
Right.
Cruel Intentions,
Right.
yes.
How did you get involved in that? You reading the script and all
Well,
of a
no, that's
sudden-
another Neil Moritz. Neil Moritz I've worked with quite a bit. This was one of his projects. And it was a small movie, and we were figuring it out. What was, had no money. This is done through an independent, truly an independent. We had no studio backing. I forget the financial entity at that time, but we cheated most of it here in Los Angeles, and took Reese and Sarah Michelle and a couple other cast, I think Ryan, Selma, back to New York, and that was the famous kiss in the park between Selma and Michelle, Sarah Michelle. The paparazzi that day was crazy.
Well, I mean,
surrounding them. But we shot very little in New York and cheated the rest here because it was mostly interiors. The pool scene we shot, the beautiful pool was the hotel downtown, the old hotel.
the Biltmore?
Sorry, yes, the Biltmore.
Biltmore.
Yeah,
Well, you're on hallowed ground here because this was the old Warner Ranch.
Correct.
Which you know.
Yeah.
And so much was filmed here. And,
Sherwood Forest over there and the Oaks, I guess.
Well, of course, National Velvet.
National
which,
Velvet,
We
right.
still have the sets existing here,
Mm-hmm.
which I keep saying that we should renovate them or they should be, it's hallowed ground.
Right.
But here we don't save history.
No, unfortunately we don't, but, I think now that it's become a country club. It's probably less important.
Well-
But it'd be nice to have a little shrine,
Absolutely.
of such a famous movie,
Exactly.
and maybe put something into it as far as
A
creating
meeting facility or special events or whatever.
Yeah,
Rather
something.
than
it's a shed
field
for
equipment.
maintenance.
Right, exactly. Now, I really would love to have you give advice to our listeners. Anyone who's interested in getting into the film production business, what would be your advice?
My advice would be to just get your foot in the door and take a job, anything that you can get into and learn, because there's so many facets in this business. I think, that's what great about USC Film School. You learn everything from screenwriting to physical production to post-production to distribution. You don't get that anywhere else, that overview. And was, I think, the most important for me, just to kind of learn an overview, but to really actually get your feet wet and do something physical in the business is the most important. And whether that be just starting as a production assistant in the office or on the set or in the costume department or whatever your interests may be, just to get in anywhere, and then you can kind of create your own path to where your interests are. Because a lot of times, I wanted to be a cinematographer when I got in the business because I loved photography, imagery, some of these, the best cinematographers of the world I just was blown away by. But doors didn't open that way for me. I figured it was going to take years before I could start as a loader, become a second assistant, first assistant, camera operator, DP. I'm thinking, God, this is going to be years before I can get up. But I was naive then, It's like
Well,
I just can't put my director of photography hat on and call myself a DP.
But you had an inquisitive mind, which I think is interesting, that you wanted to know about each of the facilities or each of the parts.
To be a Renaissance man, Joe,
Right.
was what.
Well, that's what a producer is,
So
actually.
one of my college professors told me that, Joe Casper, I'll never forget, to be a Renaissance man. And to be a Renaissance man is to learn everything about everybody in every department and know their function and what that represents.
Right.
So that's what I really took to heart, that to really know everybody's craft and what they did and how they interface with one another and what was the cart before the horse and what wasn't, and so forth and so on.
But you gravitated to...
But the opportunities when I started location managing, then it became more about production managing. And I have I'm a good kind of numbers guys. I like doing schedules.
Logistics.
Correct. Logistics, organization, things of that nature. That's kind of my creative.
Very creative.
But yeah, I just had to look at the opportunities that were presented to me and take that path, and I enjoyed it. So I put cinematography on the side. If I ever went back to it, I'd go back to it, but I never did.
How did you avoid becoming a golf pro?
My dad said there was no money in it.
But you enjoy the game.
I do, but I wasn't like my dad, who he was the director of golf for Royal Kaanapali in Maui, Hawaii. He started in the 60s.
Oh, really?
And then where I was born in Modesto, with my mother at the time, he was the head golf pro up there at Del Rio Country Club. But he played a little bit on the tour, but never did very well. He was always kind of struggling with his
Cost
putting.
a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, to get to the next
Yeah,
tournament.
right. So he became a club pro, and he enjoyed that and did that for his entire life. But I was thinking about it, but I don't know, film just seemed to be my calling. And then once the whole episode happened with George Lucas, it was like I said, capturing lightning in a bottle. And I don't know, see a lot of kids these days getting that definitive opportunity that early in their
The
life
thunderbolt.
to say, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And I was lucky, very fortunate.
Few know. But back then, we didn't have internships,
No,
which we do now, which I
right.
think is fantastic.
right. So going back to your question, it's just getting the opportunity to get in anywhere. Doesn't matter if you're in post-production, get in. Be an assistant to a director or a producer. You're going to learn so much more, and being able to interface with other individuals and seek other opportunities, I think doors will open. And you don't have to go in that door. You can go maybe this direction or that
Does it
direction.
help to have connections?
It always does.
But I think I like your attitude. I like your resourcefulness. And I'm just going to tell my listeners a little quick story about how I met you. And we both belong to the gym here. And I just was amazed at watching your strength and energy. You never rested, is what just inspired me. And I thought, I got to get to know this guy, because I had no idea of your
You can rest when you're dead, Joe.
That's true too. That's true too. Anything that you want to impart to our listeners in terms of your inspiration when you read a script, what it is that you're looking for, whatever it is that makes you tick.
A paycheck.
No, don't say that. Don't say
I'm
that.
kidding.
Because you're
I'm
much
kidding.
more
That's a
creative
joke.
than that.
I do like true stories. I mean, I think those are more interesting to me and what's always interested me in film is, and just purely from an audience perspective, is I get to walk in somebody else's shoes for 2 hours. You don't get that opportunity too often elsewhere in any other art form. But, like Stanley Kubrick was a big influence on me.
Really?
I loved him as a director and his movies, and just one of many directors. But to create that experience, to walk in somebody else's shoes or experience whatever the storyline is or era, or whether it be war or peace or whatever it is, I just think that's, sorry, I'm going off track here.
No. I follow you. And I think that you should be admired because of your inquisitive nature and of your vision. You had a vision and you followed it. And I think that it's difficult with the options that are presented and the opportunities,
Right.
too. They're all there.
A lot of it's your intuition too, I think. You kind of know
Follow
what's
your
right
gut.
and follow your gut.
That's what I say.
And sometimes it's blind luck. You go, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I really can't figure out as I push myself through. That's what I kept telling myself.
What is your advice to your kids?
Advice to my kids is to be true to yourself and enjoy what you do, and work as hard as you can. And do the best you can. That's all you can do.
That's right.
And it'll pay off eventually. You don't need to look at, what's happening right now in front of you. It's going to happen in the future. If you just pursue it, be honest with yourself, and be true to yourself.
It's good advice. Thank you, sir. I didn't realize
Thank
that you
you,
were
Joe.
such a sage. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mike.
you, Joe.
I
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
me.
you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you.